This is Justice Insight Cam. Watch authentic interactions between citizens and police captured strictly on bodycams. We elevate the viewing experience by exploring the strict legalities, hidden truths, and vital lessons of each event. Let's examine the mechanics of justice.
I need you to protect me.
Tell me what's been happening.
I wrote it down. I have photos.
The judge didn't see the diary at first. From the bench, it looked like just another notebook. Cheap spiral binding, a cracked plastic cover, corners bent like it had survived too many backpacks and too many nights stuffed under a mattress. But the teen holding it didn't treat it like paper. He held it like a lifeline. One hand kept the notebook pressed tight to his chest. The other held a phone, screen down, fingers wrapped around it, like he was afraid someone might snatch it. The courtroom was quiet in that specific family court way. No dramatic gallery, no shouting, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft click of a court reporter typing. The clerk called the case. The judge glanced down at the file, then up. "Okay," the judge said, calm and routine. "Tell me what brings us here today." The teen swallowed. His name was Jalen Brooks, 16, black. Tall enough to look older, young enough that his voice still cracked when fear squeezed it. He didn't start with a speech. He didn't start with anger. He started with a sentence that sounded almost terminal for the weight inside it. "I need you to protect me," he said. That's when the judge leaned forward, and that's when the diary finally mattered. Because in the next 40 minutes, Jalen would do something most adults never have the courage to do. He would put his private pain on a public record. He would open that notebook. He would show the court photos. He would point to dates, to bruises, to text messages, to the kind of evidence that doesn't care how charming a parent seems. And when it was over, the judge wouldn't just grant an emergency protection order. The judge would refer the case for civil damages. And months later, those pages and photos would become part of a $2 million judgment. Not because money fixes trauma, but because money is one of the few ways the system admits it failed. This is the story of how a hidden diary and a phone camera broke a lie, and how a black teen, who had been told for years that nobody would believe him, forced a courtroom to listen. Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from, city, state, or country. And if you've ever had to keep receipts just to prove you were telling the truth, drop a comment. I read them. Now let's rewind. Because the diary didn't start as evidence. It started as survival. 1. The house that was fine from the outside. Jalen lived in a small, quiet neighborhood where the lawns were cut short and people talked about good families, like it was a measurable thing. His mother, Keisha, worked nights at a distribution center. Long shifts, steel-toed boots, back pain she pretended not to have. His stepfather, Brian, worked days in maintenance at a commercial property company. He wore a uniform polo, kept his hair neat, waved at neighbors, and knew how to smile in public like he belonged in every room. That detail matters, because when people talk about abuse, they imagine monsters. But most harm hides behind normal. Behind a man who shows up to barbecues, behind a man who jokes with the mail carrier, behind a man who can say, "Yes, ma'am," to a judge. Inside the house, Brian had rules that were never written down, rules that changed depending on his mood. Jalen learned early that the safest thing in that home wasn't silence, it was prediction. You predicted whether the front door would open softly or slam. You predicted whether the TV volume meant calm or the beginning of something. You predicted whether the night would end with homework or with hiding. Keisha wasn't evil. She was exhausted, and exhaustion is a kind of blindness. When you work nights, you sleep through afternoons. When you sleep through afternoons, you miss the look in your child's eyes. When you miss the look enough times, your child stops showing it. Jalen didn't start out quiet. He was loud as a little kid, curious, always building things, Lego towers, paper airplanes, whatever he could control. Then Brian moved in, and slowly, Jalen learned that being loud attracted attention. And attention could become punishment, so he became smaller, not in body, in presence. He stopped leaving messes. He stopped asking questions. He started saying, "Yes, sir," before the sentence finished. That's how control works. It trains you to pre-comply. 2. The first bruise that had a story. The first time Jalen remembers thinking, "I should write this down," he was 13. Brian had grabbed him by the arm in the kitchen. Not a punch, not a dramatic beating, a grip, hard, angry. "Don't talk to your mother like that," Brian said. Jalen hadn't talked to his mother like anything. He'd asked, "Can you sign this permission slip?" But in Brian's house, tone was a crime, and crime needed consequences. Jalen's arm hurt for 2 days. A bruise bloomed dark and purple near his elbow. Keisha noticed it during breakfast. What happened?" she asked. Brian answered before Jalen could. "He's clumsy," Brian said. He slammed into the door playing around. Keisha sighed. "Boy," she said to Jalen, "you gotta watch yourself." Jalen nodded, not because he agreed, because the truth wouldn't land. And if the truth didn't land, it bounced back. Back into the house, back into Brian, back into consequences. That night, Jalen took a notebook from school and wrote one sentence. Not poetic, not dramatic, just a record. Brian grabbed my arm in the kitchen. Mom believed him. He stared at the sentence for a long time. Then he tore the page out. He threw it away, because even writing it felt dangerous, but the idea stayed. What if I had proof? 3. Why kids don't tell people always ask, why didn't he just tell someone? And the answer is painful, because it's simple. He tried, not in a dramatic, "Teacher, my stepdad is abusing me" way. In the way kids do when they're testing whether the world is safe. Jalen once told a coach, "Things are weird at home." The coach said, "Well, stay focused, don't bring drama in here." Jalen once told a friend, "My stepdad hates me." The friend laughed and said, "Bro, all stepdads hate stepkids." A joke, a dismissal, a door closing, and when you hear enough doors close, you stop knocking. Plus, there was another layer. Jalen was a black kid. He knew what happens when authorities enter your home. He knew that a 911 call could turn into something else. He knew that family problems in black neighborhoods sometimes get treated like criminal problems. He didn't want his mother to be arrested. He didn't want his little sister, because yes, there was a sister, 5 years old, to end up in foster care. Brian used that fear like a leash. "You want to call someone?" Brian would say. "Go ahead, watch what happens to your mom." It wasn't always said like a threat. Sometimes it was said like advice. That's the sickest part. When the abuser sounds calm, the victim sounds emotional, and the system often trusts calm. 4. The diary becomes a plan. Jalen started writing for one reason, not to feel better, to remember, because trauma messes with time. It blurs days, it makes you doubt your own memory. It makes you ask, did it really happen like that? A diary stops that. A diary says, it happened on Tuesday. A diary says, it happened at 8:41 p.m. A diary says, this is what was said. Jalen didn't write essays. Nah, he wrote logs. He wrote what he'd wish a court could see. Date, time, location, what happened, who was there. He hid the diary inside an old shoebox under his bed. And he added a second layer, photos. He learned how to take pictures that captured scale. His wrist next to a ruler, his shoulder next to a shirt tag. He learned to include the bathroom mirror clock, because clocks matter, because judges like details, because he was building a case without knowing the legal word for it. At first, the photos were small things, scratches, red marks. Then the incidents escalated. Not every day, not every week, but often enough that Jalen's body lived on alert. Brian didn't always hit. Sometimes he punished. No dinner, no phone, no door closed, no sleep. He's standing in the corner, to think. But the worst punishment wasn't physical. It was humiliation. Brian would say things like, "You think you're something? You're nothing. You're not even my kid. You're lucky I'm here." And those words did something deeper than bruises. They rewired Jalen's belief about himself. Until one day, something broke. Not in Jalen, in the plan. Because the plan needed a trigger, a moment to act. 5. The night he thought he might not make it. It was a Friday. Keisha was on a double shift. Brian was home, Jalen's sister was asleep, and Jalen came downstairs for water. That's all. Water. Brian was on the couch, TV on, beer in hand. He looked up. "Where you going?" "Kitchen," Jalen said. Brian's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart," Brian said. Jalen froze. "I'm not," he said. And Brian stood, slow, deliberate. That's another thing about fear. The slow walk can be worse than the fast one. It gives you time to imagine. Brian stepped close. "You been acting different," he said. Jalen said nothing. Brian leaned in. "You recording me?" Jalen's stomach dropped. Brian didn't know. He was guessing. But that guess meant something. It meant Jalen's carefulness was visible. It meant the abuser could sense losing control. Brian grabbed Jalen's phone from the counter. Jalen reacted without thinking. "Give that back," he said. Brian smiled. "That's what I thought," he said. And then Brian did something that later would matter in court. He forced Jalen to unlock the phone. Not with violence on camera, with intimidation, with proximity, with tone. Jalen's hands shook. He unlocked it. Brian scrolled. And he didn't find the hidden folder. Jalen had protected it. But Brian found the Notes app. He found a draft, a partial log, 2 lines, and Brian's face changed. Not anger, recognition, like he'd just seen the future. "You trying to ruin me?" Brian whispered. Jalen's voice was thin. "I just want you to stop," he said. Brian's hand moved, fast, not a punch, a slap, a sudden, humiliating slap that made Jalen's ears ring. Then Brian hissed, "If you ever tell anyone, you'll regret it." Jalen stumbled back. The shock wasn't just the slap, it was the certainty. Brian believed he could do anything. And in that moment, Jalen realized the diary wasn't enough. He needed someone else to hold the truth, because evidence hidden under a bed can be destroyed. A witness can't, not if you get to them first. That night, Jalen didn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to Brian's footsteps, listening to the TV, listening to his sister breathe. And he made the decision. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I tell. 6. The one adult who didn't laugh at school, Jalen had a counselor named Ms. Walker. Not a magical savior. A tired professional with a small office and a box of tissues no one wanted to touch. She had asked Jalen before if everything was okay. He'd always said yes, because yes is safer. But that Monday, Jalen walked in without an appointment. He closed the door. He sat, and he didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Ms. Walker didn't push. She waited. Then she said, softly, "You don't have to protect the adults in your life." That sentence hit Jalen like a key turning in a lock. His eyes burned. He pulled the diary out of his backpack. He placed it on the table. Then he placed his phone next to it. Ms. Walker's face changed. Not shock, recognition, because she had seen kids bring notebooks before, and she knew what it meant. Jalen's voice came out in a whisper. "I wrote everything down," he said. Ms. Walker nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'm listening." Jalen opened the diary. He turned to a page, a date, a time, a description. Then he opened the photo folder. He didn't show everything. He didn't need to. He showed enough. Enough for Ms. Walker to understand this wasn't teen drama. This was danger. And because she was a mandated reporter, Ms. Walker did what the law required. She called, not the parent, not the stepfather, the proper channels, Child Protective Services. And because the allegations were immediate and the evidence was documented, the call was treated as urgent. If you're still here, this is the kind of case where small details matter. So drop a comment. Do you think diaries and photos should count as strong evidence in court? Or do you think courts should require neutral proof like medical reports and police documentation? No right answer, just reality. Now back to the story. 7. The emergency hearing. Emergency protection hearings move fast. They don't wait for everyone to be comfortable. They're designed to prevent worst-case outcomes. That's why they exist. And that's also why they can be misused. But this time, the urgency wasn't invented. It was documented. Within 48 hours, Jalen was sitting in a courthouse waiting area with Ms. Walker and a child advocate. Aunt Keisha had been notified. She arrived looking like someone who'd been slapped by reality. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands trembled. She kept saying, "I didn't know." Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's denial-breaking. But either way, a child in danger doesn't get to wait for a parent's awakening. Brian arrived with an attorney. He wore a clean shirt. He looked offended. He looked like a man being inconvenienced. And when he saw Jalen, he smiled. Not warm, a thin smile, like a warning. Jalen looked down, not because he was weak, because he knew eye contact could be a trigger. He had evidence. He didn't need a stare down. In the courtroom, the judge, Judge Renee Caldwell, took the bench. She was calm, direct. She had the posture of someone who had seen too many kids stand in front of adults and carry adult problems. She asked why the hearing was being requested. The child advocate spoke. "Your Honor, the minor child is requesting emergency protection. He has documented incidents of physical and emotional abuse. He has contemporaneous diary entries and photographs. We believe he is at imminent risk if returned to the home." Brian's attorney objected. "Your Honor, this is hearsay. Teen exaggeration. A troubled child acting out. There is no medical report." Judge Caldwell didn't flinch. "Show me what you have," she said. That's when Jalen's diary moved from hidden to public. The advocate handed it up. The judge flipped through pages, dates, times, consistency, then the photos, printed copies, carefully presented. The judge didn't react like a TV judge. She reacted like someone trained to see patterns. She asked Jalen a direct question. "Did you write these entries at the time they occurred?" Jalen's voice was steady. "Yes, ma'am." "Did anyone tell you what to write?" "No, ma'am." "Why did you write them?" Jalen swallowed. "Because nobody believed me," he said. That sentence landed, not as drama, as logic. Judge Caldwell turned to Brian. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "do you deny these allegations?" Brian's voice was smooth. "Yes," he said. "This is ridiculous. He's disrespectful. He's been trying to split the family." The judge nodded. Then she asked, "Why would he take photos?" Brian shrugged. "Attention," he said. The judge stared at him. Then she said the sentence that changed everything for Jalen. "Emergency protection is granted," she said, "effective immediately." Brian's head snapped up. His attorney started to protest. The judge raised a hand. "This minor will not return to the home pending investigation," she said. "The court orders no contact by Mr. Brooks. Any violation will result in arrest." Jalen exhaled. Not relief, not joy. The kind of breath you take when your body finally understands you're not trapped. Judge Caldwell continued. "I am also appointing a guardian ad litem and ordering a full evaluation. temporary placement will be with the mother if safe, or with a relative approved by the court. Keisha cried. Not pretty, not performative, real. And the judge added one more thing. Mr. Brooks, she said, this court takes allegations of abuse seriously, and so does the civil system. If these allegations are substantiated, the consequences will extend beyond this courtroom. That wasn't a threat. It was a warning, because Judge Caldwell had seen cases where evidence like this didn't stop at protection. It turned into damages. 8. The aftermath. Safety doesn't feel safe yet. Jaylen didn't go home that night, not to Brian's house, not to Keisha's either, because the home itself was now contaminated with fear. He stayed with his aunt, Simone. Simone didn't ask him 100 questions. She didn't say, "I told you so." She hugged him once, firm. Then she said, "You eat." Food. That's what safety sounds like sometimes. Jaylen slept in a real bed, in a room with a lock he could control, and he still woke up at 3 a.m. because your nervous system doesn't update as fast as a court order. Over the next weeks, once investigators came, they interviewed Jaylen, they interviewed Keisha, they interviewed Brian, they interviewed the little sister, they reviewed the diary, they reviewed the photos, they reviewed school attendance, they found small corroborations, nurse visits for headaches, a teacher note about flinching, a coach recalling bruises explained away, not one dramatic smoking gun, a pattern, and patterns are what systems finally respond to when they can't deny them. Brian was removed from the home, a no-contact order stayed. Keisha entered counseling, not as punishment, as repair, because guilt is heavy, but responsibility is heavier. 9. The civil case. The protection order kept Jaylen physically safe, but it didn't repair what had been done, and it didn't pay for therapy, or medical appointments, or the school disruption, or the years of harm. That's where civil court enters. A civil attorney reviewed the file. They looked at the diary. They looked at the photos. They looked at the documentation from the emergency hearing. They filed a lawsuit, not just against Brian, but also, this is key, against the institution that failed to intervene when warnings existed. In some versions of cases like this, it's a school. In others, it's a youth program. In this case, it was a contracted family services agency that had conducted wellness visits after a prior call that had been closed as unfounded, because Brian looked calm, because the house looked clean, because Jaylen had been too afraid to speak clearly, and because systems often trust adults more than kids. The lawsuit argued negligence, failure to protect, failure to investigate, and emotional and physical damages. The number requested was large, not because Jaylen wanted to be rich, because the harm was large, because the cost of therapy over years is large, because accountability has to be expensive enough to matter. 10. The $2 million. Most cases settle, not because the truth isn't real, because institutions fear juries, they fear evidence presented cleanly, they fear diaries, they fear photos, they fear the kind of testimony that makes ordinary people angry. So the negotiations began. Quietly, numbers moved, lawyers argued, statements were drafted, and eventually, a judge approved a resolution. $2 million. Some of it structured, some of it placed into a protected account, some of it set aside for therapy and education. Because the court understood something important. A teenager can't be handed a pile of money and told, "Good luck." That's how trauma repeats. The final order included the money, but it also included something else, a permanent protection order, a mandated no contact, and oversight, because safety isn't just a moment, it's maintenance. 11. What the diary really did. People will argue about diaries. They'll say a kid can lie. They'll say photos can be staged. They'll say teenagers exaggerate, but here's what made Jalen's diary different. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't written for court. It was written in the language of fear. Short, specific, consistent. It showed the logic of a child trying to survive. And when combined with photos and other small corroborations, it did what the system usually demands. It made the truth hard to dismiss. It forced adults to stop arguing about he said, she said, and start dealing with he wrote, he photographed, he documented. 12. The last question. A year after the emergency hearing, Jalen sat in a therapy office and said something that still stings. "I didn't write the diary because I wanted attention," he said. "I wrote it because I wanted a future." And that's the point. Kids don't build evidence to be dramatic. They build evidence when the world has taught them their voice isn't enough. So let me leave you with this. If a child has to document their own pain to be believed, what does that say about the adults around them? And if you were the teacher, the neighbor, the counselor, someone who noticed small signs, would you step in sooner? Or would you wait for the diary? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Because the most tragic part of these cases isn't that a judge grants protection. It's that protection only arrives after a child becomes their own investigator, after they learn to turn trauma into evidence, after they learn, too early, that proof is sometimes the only thing louder than an adult's denial. Jalen didn't win because he was lucky. He won because he refused to disappear. He kept a record, and when the moment came, he brought it into the one place where silence can't survive. A courtroom, a bench, a judge, and a set of pages that finally made the truth impossible to ignore.
We value your viewership. Should you find this investigative report helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Justice Insight Cam. Keep a watchful eye, stay safe, and join us for the next compelling story.